Hi, I'm Primwati Groover, and this is my graduation lecture for Spalding University Writing for Children's Program, Spring 2020. The title of my lecture is Art of Misdirection, Attributes of a Trickster and Why They Are Important in a Story. I'm going to begin my lecture with a quote from the folktale Stories Men Tell by Stith Thompson. Stories may differ in subject from place to place. The conditions and purposes of tale-telling may change as we move from land to land or from century to century, and yet everywhere it ministers to the same basic social and individual needs. As a reader, I want to find stories that are interesting and must connect to my emotion in some way, whether it's through the plot or events or the characters. For me, the character I find the most fascinating is the trickster. Tricksters could be anyone. They could be the head of a state or a country, a neighbor, a friend, a mentor, a helper, an antagonist, a villain, or even a protagonist. They could also be a family member, such as a parent, a guardian, grandparent, sibling, cousin, aunt, or uncle. How do we recognize someone as a trickster? Or what are the attributes or characteristics that define a character as a trickster? William J. Hines and William G. Doty in their book, Mythical Trickster Figures, Contours, Context, and Criticism, describe the attributes of a trickster as fundamentally ambiguous and anomalous. And from this characteristic flows deceiver or trick player, shapeshifter, situation inverter, messenger or imitator of the gods, and sacred or lewd brickler. The trickster is also cast as an out person, and his activities are often outlawish, outlandish, outrageous, out of bounds, and out of order. No borders are sacrosanct, be they religious, cultural, linguistic, epistemological, or metaphysical. Tricksters are also extremely intelligent, cunning, and at times foolish. They are also sly, funny, and entertaining. They are sometimes the underdogs. But the goal of all tricksters is to misdirect their audience. Misdirection is a subtle, deceptive art of directing an audience's attention towards one thing, so the audience does not notice the mechanics of a trick that is being performed. A trickster is like a good magician, and a good magician will distract his or her audience with controlled choreographed actions. What does or where does one look at when a magician is performing his or her tricks? Does the audience look at the hands, the body, the feet, or the movement of the head? Or should the audience listen to words and follow the directions or instructions of the magician? Misdirection from the magician will sometimes come in three ways. Time. The magician has his object carefully placed in his hand before he begins the trick. Place or the setting where the object is. The audience's attention is drawn to the magician's right hand while the move is done by his assistant or his foot or his left hand. And the goal? The magician leads the audience to a decision in such a subtle way that the audience thinks afterwards that it was their own choice or reasoning that they came to that specific conclusion. A writer can do the same with words, but what is the value to the writer? Or better yet, the story, time, place, or setting or goal of these techniques? We writers can use these methods to smooth the pacing of a story or to slide information past the reader without waving it in his or her face, or to change the direction of a story in mid-page, and or to plant clues that will lie dormant until they are ready to sprout. Like the saying, if in Act 1 you have a pistol hanging on the wall, then it must fire in the last act. In fiction, misdirection can be either external or internal. That is, the author can use the story as a frame to misdirect the readers, or a trickster in the story can misdirect one or more of the other characters. Let's look at an example. Remember the scene at the Wizard's Palace in The Wizard of Oz? The great and mighty Oz, surrounded by smoke and fire, bellowing authority from his throne. I am Oz, the great and terrible. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. As if Dorothy and her companions would continue to believe him. They previously did, and it worked for most of the story, until Dorothy's dog, Toto, pulled the curtain back. They saw a small man who'd been pretending to be the great wizard. This is misdirection in place, used by the wizard to trick the people of Oz, along with Dorothy. Misdirection is a great tool for writers, no matter the genre he or she is writing. In novels, short stories, movies, television shows, plays, comics, etc., most stories have a character whose behavior is sinister, or that of a prankster or a mischief maker. It's easy to recognize or think that this character is a trickster. But what about other characters who want to do good but are willing to use lies or tricks or even deceive the other characters in the story in order to achieve what they want? Let's look at a few examples of protagonists who manifest some of the attributes of a trickster. Krishna is considered one of the most benevolent gods and a protector of Hindus. Yet he's also known and recognized as one of the greatest tricksters in Hinduism because of his behavior. He's a shapeshifter. He's a magician. He's a god. He's a deceiver. He has magical powers. He's also a situation inverter, a sacred messenger, a trick player, and is extremely cunning. Another example is the teenage protagonist Buffy in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a novelization by Richie Tankersley based on the hit TV series created by Joss Whedon. Buffy has magical powers. She can fly. She shapeshifts into a vampire. She's a deceiver. A situation inverter. She takes a bad situation and turns it into a good one. She's a trick player. She's a vampire, which automatically puts her as an out person, one whose activities are outlawish, outlandish, outrageous, and out of bounds. Sabrina in Sabrina the Teenage Witch by Sarah Rees Brennan is another example of a protagonist who manifests some of the attributes of a trickster as described by Hines and Doty in their book. Sabrina has magical powers. She can fly. She's also a shapeshifter who changes her hair and eye color. She's a deceiver, a situation inverter, a trick player. She's also a witch, which automatically puts her as an out person, one whose activities are outlawish, outlandish, outrageous, and out of bounds. I think it's interesting both Buffy and Sabrina are protagonists and have so many of the same trickster qualities. One's a vampire and one's a witch. Yet they both use misdirection to trick the bad guys in order to save their world. And they're only given a short span of time to accomplish this task. Another character who manifested some of the qualities of a trickster is Katniss Everdeen, the protagonist in The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. Katniss knew how to read the difficult circumstances she found herself in and was able to think on her feet. This allowed her to manipulate those situations to her advantage and save her life. Katniss's attributes: deceiver, situation inverter, intelligent, underdog, cunning, trick player. In the young adult novel series Ranger's Apprentice by John Flanagan, Halt O'Carrick was the mentor to the protagonist Will Treaty. Halt was a trickster, and his job was to teach Will how to use trickery to save the people of their kingdom. Halt also taught Will how to be cunning, how to take a situation against him and make it so that that situation works for him. In other words, Halt taught Will how to become a trickster like himself. Characteristics of a trickster as manifested by Halt: shape shifter. He used clothes to change his appearance and shape. Deceiver. He sometimes acted as a spy, a situation inverter. Trick player. Lied, stole, cheated, even killed to save the kingdom. Charlotte, in Charlotte's Web, was a mentor and a helper to Wilbur. She was also a trickster based on her actions according to Hines and Doty in their book. She used her cunning to deceive Mrs. Zuckerman by weaving the words "some pig" in her web. She's a situation inverter, a deceiver, a trick player, an imitator of the gods by deciding Wilbur deserves to live. She is also cunning. She used resources such as the rat Templeton to help her get what she wanted, and that was to save Wilbur's life. Charlotte also used misdirection to divert Mr. Zuckerman from killing Wilbur and subtly led him to form the opinion that this pig was very special. Michael Chabon, in the foreword to Trickster Makes This World, Mischief, Myth, and Art by Lewis Hyde, says, one who perpetrates a lie, who embodies the contingent, and in so doing lends it the appearance of necessity, his name is Trickster. The tricksters in stories have many of the same issues as their audiences, irrespective of the society, period, and location they belong to. David William writes in his book, The Trickster Brain, Neuroscience, Evolution, and Narrative. Most stories deal with universal themes we all recognize. The things we value most: love, sexuality, children, dominance, power, the struggle for life, and grief from death. For this reason, we can take stories from both the ancient past and from cultures around the world and feel in sync with them. According to Hines and Doty, examples of the trickster's negative activity, such as the profaning of sacred beliefs, being seduced by pride, or engaging in antisocial behavior, can be understood as an adroit reverse, stressing of the need for reverence, humility, or dedication to the common good. Tricksters are not constrained by society's rule and can escape almost any situations in which they are caught. They dissolve boundaries by moving them, breaking the rules and regulations by making their own. They possess an interminable ability and determination to survive any circumstances. Tricksters also have no respect for the values defining society and will smash them for their own gain or pleasure. Lewis Hyde, in his book, Trickster Makes This World, Mischief, Myth, and Art, writes, "Beyond that, they teach people how to behave." A quote by Maya Angelou: "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Just as a skilled filmmaker uses images, sound, and dialogue to make the viewer feel different emotions, a good writer will also evoke emotions through his characters by their word choices, actions, place, and time. But what about characters who deliberately misdirect and use their wit and cunning to get what they want without caring how it affects others? I love trickster stories, and one of my favorite is the well-known trickster character Anansi. As a child, I remembered sitting around a fire pit, roasting corn, and listening to stories about him. It was happy times. So even today, whenever I read about Anansi, I connect happy memories to him. Although we were supposed to learn from his actions, especially when he behaved badly, yet I was in awe of him. Why? I couldn't be naughty as him and get away with it. So I lived through his actions, as he could do things I couldn't or didn't dare do them. Jane Yolen writes in Touch Magic, Fantasy, Fairy, and Folklore in the Literature of Childhood. We can wear skins that are not ours. We can look at the landscape through someone else's eyes. Anansi did that for me. I was able to wear his skin, see what he was seeing, hear what he was hearing, and feel his disappointment when he was caught lying or stealing or cheating. His attributes as a trickster got him into trouble, but he made me laugh. Anansi manifested some of the qualities of a trickster: cunning, trick player, outlandish, outrageous, out of bounds. In the folk tale, The Crafty Old Snake from the Hittopadesh, the trickster character is a cobra snake, one who tricks and deceives. Cobra snakes are considered some of the most intelligent, feared, and respected snakes in India. Using misdirection through words and actions, along with other attributes as a trickster, Cobra turns a bad situation into a good one for himself. He tricks the king of frogs and his subjects to become his meals voluntarily. In this story, the cobra is an underdog. He is a situation inverter, a deceiver, a trick player, and is extremely cunning. Let's look at Puss in Boots. Although This story is considered a fairy tale due to its fantastical elements. It can also fall into the category of a trickster tale. The protagonist, Puss, manifests some of the attributes of a trickster through his activities. He's a situation inverter, a deceiver. He's cunning, a trick player. Puss used misdirection to trick the ogre into becoming a mouse, killed it, and then ate it, and lived happily ever after. Coyote is another of my favorite trickster characters. As a mythical figure, Coyote is revered by most Native American tribes. Yet, his behavior makes him a trickster. He's also funny, full of crafty intelligence, sneaky, arrogant, greedy, reckless, irresponsible, and a character whose lack of wisdom and judgment gets him into trouble, while his cunning gets him out of it. He also teaches, creates, guides, and helps humans in their journey through his behavior, good or bad. Other examples of tricksters in children's literature, TV shows, and movies are Bart Simpson, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Hanuman from the Ramayana, Bengal Tiger in the Uttar Pradesh, Jack and the Beanstalk, Gretel in Hansel and Gretel, Prince Scar in The Lion King, Matilda in Roald Dahl's Matilda, Aang, the hero of Avatar, the last airbender who enjoys tricking and playing jokes on his foes, Pink Panther, Monkey King in Chinese Tale, Felix the cat, Jack Sparrow, the pirate, captain from Walt Disney's Pirate of the Caribbean film series, Jarrett, King of the Goblins from Jim Henson's Labyrinth, Woody Woodpecker, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Nitai from Nityananda Charitamrita, Stories from Bengal, White Rabbit and Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, Zomo, a rabbit from Nigerian folklore, Alien Venturas, the second point of view character in the YA series Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, Sierra in The Shadow Shaper by Danielle Jose Older, Rachel Lee in The Prankless by Anna Stanuszewski, Dog in Cat and Dog by Peter Copelands, The Pigs in Piggy Pie by Arnel Lobel, Nimai from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Stories from Bengal, Briar Fox, Briar Rabbit, Peavies along with Fred and George Weasley from Harry Potter, Chato the Cat in Chato's Kitchen, Muriel Target in Brandon's Mill, Fable Haven, Hoodoo in Hoodoo by Ronald L. Smith, Severine and the Jumbies by Tracy Batista, The Evil Queen in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. These are just a few trickster characters. There are so many, many, many more. Tricksters will commit thefts, forgery, adultery, fraud, and other deeds for astonishingly small stakes and under much greater risk of being discovered than will the ordinary scoundrel. Why trickster characters are important in a story. The trickster's characters may encounter conflicts, and this will require them to make difficult decisions to resolve their problems. These decisions can lead to results which may carry either a warning or information to its readers or listeners in a hidden way. Moral and ethical lessons can be taught through the trickster's behavior. Tricksters are fundamentally defined by the ability to outsmart stronger, authoritative foes through their wit and cunning. Where protagonists or heroes or other characters must adhere to a certain measure of predictability, tricksters often use that predictability against them. This in turn creates conflict and forces the protagonist to step outside his realm of comfort to defeat the trickster character. If the trickster is the protagonist, then he or she must become smarter than the villain very quickly in order to defeat that character and win. Some of the techniques a trickster character may use to achieve his or her goal: deceiver, shapeshifter, trickery, situation inverter, messenger or imitator of the gods, sacred or lewd brickler. Becomes an out person, so his or her activities are outlawish, outlandish, outrageous, out of bounds, and out of order. Cunning, intelligent. But the most important one is misdirection. He or she is a master of this art. The trickster may be the most important character in the story. Behind almost every successful protagonist is a trickster. Batman is an example. Without the Joker, there's no need for Batman. The trickster character and his attributes hold a distinct position in the framework of a story as a catalyst for change, conflict, and growth. And this character may be exactly what your project needs. Thank you so much. I'm honored and grateful for this opportunity to speak on one of my favorite characters, the trickster.